Okay, hello everybody, and welcome back to our latest Techsy Special Source Founders podcast. Today we are joined by Erik Severinghaus, who has very kindly agreed to talk to us about Bloomfilter. Erik is the co-founder and co-CEO of Bloomfilter. Bloomfilter is an AI-driven process mining application for the software development lifecycle. So, hi Erik, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Keiran, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. It's nice to see you and nice to see Ken.
Wonderful. So why don't you just give us a little rundown of what Bloomfilter is for people who are not familiar with it?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. And thanks for the opportunity. So we're about a 3-year-old software platform company. And the reason that we exist is to make the software development lifecycle more observable, more predictable, more efficient, and more nimble. And so kind of the story behind that is I've been building software companies, primarily business software companies, for the better part of 20 years and operating them. And I have always found it really difficult to understand like what everybody's building, when it's going to be available, how much is it costing to build all this stuff, et cetera. And this has always been like a pain point for me. And so there's a couple new techniques. I always thought that it was going to be impossible to solve this problem. It was like death, taxes, and business and software teams fighting with each other. And what's happened in the last 10 years or so is there's been a new kind of class of software data analytics called process mining that allows us to connect into all the systems people already use and basically figure out where is the software development process screwed up, where is there rework, where are there defects happening, where are there missed requirements, that kind of thing. And then obviously, you know, we've had a transformation in AI over the last couple of years. And so when you take those two technologies together and you apply it to the process of building software, you can really come up with some unbelievable insights.
I've been in software for about 10 years. I'm a product person. And so I've come across this a lot. My biggest stress as a product person has always been business kind of hitting me with those questions. When's this going to be ready? Why is it taking so long? Does this also scratch that itch, or does this more kind of work for between teams?
Yeah, so there's two key things that when we talk about this problem, we talk about. So if you're sitting in like the chief product officer role, right, you basically have two key jobs. The first is to keep your board and your executive team happy. So to your point, your CFO, your COO, your CEO, sales, marketing, everybody's hitting you over the head and going, hey, Ken, when are we going to get that thing that you told us we were going to get? You said it was going to be done, tomorrow. When's it going to be done? Never mind the fact that scope has changed and resources have changed and constraints have changed and all that kind of stuff, right? So the first thing that we talk about a lot is the process translator. It's basically how do we translate what's happening in the software development process to the executive suite, the board, the CFO, the COO, in language that they can understand so that we can build a better conversation. And then what ultimately ends up coming out of those conversations is, okay, that's all well and good, but now how can we do more faster? How can we do more with less or do more with the same? How can we become more efficient, and how can we reduce our risk? And so when we think about those measures, that's where we think about this in the context of being also a software process debugger. So if you think about writing code, right, many of us, learned to write code many years ago, like your best friend is the debugger that allows you to understand within that code, what's the state of the variables, where do you have infinite loops, all this other kind of stuff. Well, we need that same concept for the process of building software. And so this is where we kind of have that process translator to help you communicate better with the exec team and the businessy folks. And then we have that debugger to help make the process run more efficiently.
Quick break. Imagine outsourcing without the headaches. With TaskBeast, you get your own chief outsourcing officer who finds top freelancers, manages them, and guarantees quality work, saving you time and stress. TaskBeast is outsourcing made seamless. Visit taskbeast.com to get started. Now, back to the show.
I find that interesting. The challenge I've always had is you kind of want to be fast and be aggressive and say, hey, I'll have this by next week or whatever. And then when those times come where you end up being really late, then everybody hits you on the head. And so what I've found that product leaders do, especially in larger organizations, you see more that are like have polished political skills, because you're constantly kind of saying, oh, that's going to take a while. Like, all right, we're going to try for 2 weeks. Like, you know that your good target's 2 weeks, but you say 5. that's what kind of the job teaches you. But so now with this, we can be more secure and say, all right, like 2 weeks is a good time, and I have some kind of I have some tools to help me.
Exactly. And like the bugaboos that end up hitting you are like, you think it's going to take, I don't know, call it 4 weeks. And then you find out that the team scoped the requirements wrong. And like we thought it was half done and we've got to go back and we've got to redo it all. Right. Or you end up finding out that, oh man, the requirements totally changed because, in the requirements gathering process, we forgot about this use case or that use case. And so what we always stress is like at every part of the software development chain. So when you think about software development as a business process, right? It starts at the board level with what are the priorities. It translates into roadmap in terms of how to meet those priorities. That then flows all the way down through, prototyping, design, requirements, engineering, into testing, and then ultimately deployment, right? And when you think about this whole big process, everybody in this process is well-meaning people that are usually working their trying really, really hard to deliver a whole bunch of business value. But what ends up happening is the product people don't always speak the same language as the tech people and the dev people, who certainly don't speak the same language as the finance people, who probably aren't speaking the same language as the salespeople. And so what happens is everybody ends up with a different slice of reality and a different view of what's going on. And people end up talking past each other. And this is where when we talk about like this translation thing, it's like, I don't know about you, Ken, like I'm a technical guy. I can't make heads or tails of what the hell's happening in any non-trivial Jira environment in terms of like, so are we going to ship this key thing on time or not? And so what ends up happening is people try and pull that information out. They use Excel to turn it into a PowerPoint presentation that's like out of date by the time it's presented. And now all of a sudden everybody's talking past each other because we've all got a different view of reality. And so what we're really rooted in here is the idea, the fundamental premise that if we can connect into all these tools, we can mine all this process flow information, we can extract it and we can abstract it and we can make it consumable by different executives in ways that they understand, then we can all at least have the same view of the facts, right? And we can at least baseline on what are the facts, and then we can work together to problem solve. Versus what ends up happening too often of people talking past each other, people get frustrated, and then you get into these games being played where people triple estimate how long it's going to take, or you get into all this politicking, and that just obviously becomes a toxic environment.
Gotcha. Okay. And this doesn't look at the actual code, right? It just looks at the process, like the tickets and this kind of thing.
That's the bulk of it. What we're finding is there are places where we can use AI to start to actually look at the code to make this. So the place that we usually start is just looking at the process flow metadata. But then some of the stuff that we have found ourselves, right, is it becomes really interesting when you can correlate the pull request in the code in the commit to the Jira ticket that commit is supposedly solving. Well, now all of a sudden you can look at it and you can use an LLM to say, hey, here's the requirements in this card, and here's the pull request in the code. Does this match that? Like, are these things actually solving those problems? And you can start to do things like create risk scores, and you can start to use AI to apply some process governance and some process automation to all of this too. So we kind of start by not seeing the code at all and just looking at the process flow information. And then what a lot of our customers start to do is they start to say, okay, great. Now how can we start to do some automation? And that's where we then start to get into a little bit of code profiling and analysis and stuff.
Gotcha. Okay. And just to get to kind of how you arrived at deciding to do this, it sounds like you did some kind of leadership roles in larger companies. I saw you work with DocuSign. You also did a bunch of your own companies. So I guess you saw this bubbling up and decided, all right, I'm going to solve this. This is a problem.
Yeah. So I've seen this problem everywhere I've been. Like I said, I taught myself to program in second grade. I started building software companies for a living in college. I've founded, a half a dozen companies, had a couple of big successes and a few learning experiences along the way. I was fortunate enough to operate a company called Spring CM that we sold to DocuSign, observed a lot of these things at DocuSign. So I've seen it like big companies, small companies, IBM, DocuSign, whatever. So I've seen this problem crop up everywhere. Like I said, I never really thought it was solvable. It never really occurred to me that this was a problem that technology could really take a big chunk out of. And what happened is I was actually kind of like quasi-retired. I was hanging out with my kids. I was doing a bunch of investing and a bunch of consulting. I thought I was done operating. And so I got to know this company, Bloomfilter, as the founder and original CEO, who's now my co-CEO, Andrew Wolf. Andrew was bringing the company through an incubator called Techstars in Chicago, Illinois, where I live, and I invest in a bunch of those companies and stuff like that. And so I was actually leading an investment round for a group I work with called Hyde Park Angels. And I got so like in my head, I understood the academic discipline of process mining, and I was very, very cognizant of software development and the software development lifecycle. And in my head, like the two neurons connected in my brain somewhere and like intertwined, that was software development lifecycle and process mining. And once those two things connected in my brain, I like could not stop thinking about it. And so I got so excited, I got so obsessed with it. I started calling Andrew night and day and saying, dude, this is the coolest thing. Like, you don't understand. This thing can change the trajectory of the world, because all of our experiences in life are now governed by the experiences around software. And so Andrew was kind enough to invite me to partner with him to operate the company. And I joined as co-founder and co-CEO right there on the spot, basically.
Cool. Wow. And in your journey now, like, is your product at the point where customers see that value that you're talking about, or is it still you're figuring it out?
Well, I mean, we're always figuring it out, right? I would challenge any software leader to ever say, nope, it's done, we're good. So we're certainly always figuring it out. Our reach always exceeds our grasp. We've got a healthy and robust roadmap of things that we want to build. That being said, we do have a number of phenomenal initial customers, some of which we've got referenceable on our website. So folks like Intrusion and SoftServe and some of the best software development firms and companies in the world. And we've been fortunate enough to have them using the platform now for more than a year in some cases, seeing tremendous value. And it's from there that we've really been able to grow and scale quite a bit over the course of the last year.
And is this dynamic that you were explaining happening where different execs that are maybe on the business side, like your platform is translating to them where things are at in an accurate way and everyone's on the same page? Or
yeah, this is like the coolest thing I've ever seen, which is like when a product leader, one of the first requests that we got from Myron at Intrusion, and this is when I knew we were onto something, is he started using the platform. And he said, hey, man, I need two things from you. I need to be able to export this so I can put it in a PowerPoint so I can take it into my CEO. And I need to be able to export this to a television screen so that I can put it up in the room where my developers have stand up so that we can see it every day. And so all of a sudden, the same data model became the source of truth for what the CEO looks at every 2 weeks when he does his review with the chief product officer, and what the development teams are looking at every day when they show up and they do stand up. And that's really our goal and our aspiration. And it's what we find with most of our customers. We've been very fortunate with this so far, is that once we get integrated and once we get calibrated with their process, which typically takes about 30 days, we start to become indispensable in terms of how this gets communicated and discussed at the board level, all the way down to how it gets. We talk a lot about the same data model from the board meeting to the Scrum meeting.
Okay, interesting. And last question on this is, I understand this problem very well, but it's also a problem that's hard to put a number on in terms of what's the value of it. Like how, and I imagine you would want to charge more than less. So how do you kind of tackle that?
Totally. So you're right, man. Again, like this is one of these things that everybody knows is a problem, and nobody really thinks that it's solvable. So like most people haven't even started to think about the value levers around it. What we see when we build business cases for our customers are three key value levers. The first is the hardest dollar cost that we can get rid of and the easiest to quantify is the amount of time product leaders and product managers and PMOs are spending compiling these reports for execs. And we usually see that this is anywhere from like 25 to 33% of their time is spent building reports for executive consumption. So when that can go away, there's like a really good hard dollar savings we've got there. The second one is where we can make the developers more efficient. And the good news is 40 years, I mean, really since the book, The Mythical Man Month, we have been trying, and probably before that, we've been trying to profile and understand how do we make the software development lifecycle more efficient. And what we found is, IBM has done time and material studies where they've been able to show that it's 100 times more expensive to fix a software flaw in production than it is in design. And so where we can profile and we can show here, hey, here's how much rework you have, and here's where your cycle times are really long, and here's where you've got tasks that aren't being tested. So, you've got risk of security or QA bugs or things like that. We can create a business case around the developer efficiency. The third thing, the third value lever here, which is really the most important one, is if you've got a software initiative that is like bet the business, or you've got something that's critical to hitting your revenue goals, well, you damn well better hit that deadline and you better ship on time. Otherwise, you're going to be in a lot of trouble, right? And so what we look at a lot is what is the business value of key initiatives, and what is the value of having almost an insurance policy to make sure that this stuff is going to ship on time. And so we frame out those three kind of metrics, and we go through a value engineering exercise with our customers before we ever let them sign a contract, to ultimately quantify the expected business value and set really clear goals and expectations around what we're going to do with them when we go operate.
Very, very cool. One just response. I'm often in the situation. I work with some clients, and I have a CEO now who's a very business guy. He's never really done software, and he gets reports and updates from me on how we're building a platform for him. But I'd love, sometimes I kind of feel like, all right, maybe he thinks I'm bullshitting or something, I'd love, if there was something else to say, yeah, this is what was done, and something that's third party that kind of repeats what I'm saying, and just gives them.
We need to have a sales conversation after this podcast, man. Come on.
Yeah. Well, hey, why not just have it now? I mean, who cares, right? Who cares anymore? Erik, I'm really interested to hear a bit more about the early days. I know you weren't there right at the beginning. So at what point did you join? What was the traction kind of like then? And then what have you done to build it up over the last couple of years?
Yeah, so when I joined the company, they were just finishing this accelerator program, Techstars. The business was about 9 months old. It had, maybe $100,000 of capital in it. It was 4 people, a dream, almost a garage, and we were trying to figure out how to make that a reality, right? And so I obviously got very excited, joined as co-founder. And, the first thing that we needed to do was go put a seed round together. And so we had to go tell the story, frame up, as we work to continue to build the platform. And this is not an easy software platform to build. I mean, you're talking about a lot of sophistication in terms of trying to figure out how to solve this problem. There's a lot of nuance to it. And so, we obviously started working very, very hard building the platform and trying to get the platform ready. That took us about 2 years to really get something that we could start to take to market. And in the meantime, we needed to pay salaries and all of that kind of stuff in order to get it to that point. And so I went out and raised a seed round of capital. I closed the seed round, I think a month and a half after Silicon Valley Bank in the United States shut its doors. So it was a bit of a tumultuous time to figure out, how do we close an early stage round of venture investing. Fortunately, we were able to do that. And we have some great investors from Chicago, from the West Coast, and from the East Coast, as well as, I should say, from Cleveland, where many of the original co-founders, are from. And so we got a great cap table full of wonderful investors. Took us a couple of years to build the product. We really started bringing the product to market early this year. And so we've got a number of great customers, a number of great partners that are building solutions on top of our platform. We just recently, I'm really excited to say, we just about 2 weeks ago, so hot off the presses, announced a partnership with a company called Celonis out of Germany. And they are sort of the undisputed world leaders in process mining and process intelligence. massive company, thousands of employees, large revenue numbers, all of that kind of thing. And so they actually selected us to power their Celonis for the software development lifecycle use case, which is something that we are really, really excited to have announced to the market a couple weeks ago and are now doing a whole bunch with them. So yeah, we're at the stage now where we're kind of scaling, late seed round, I would call it, scaling very, very quickly, bringing customers on, bringing partners on, locking down the distribution channels, and preparing for, getting to a Series A probably at some point in the next calendar year or so.
You mentioned distribution channels. So is it mainly kind of a B2B sales human approach, or like what are your main channels these days?
Yeah, so we've got a sales team ourselves, and so we work with a number of customers directly. We're also fortunate to have some wonderful partners that are building solutions with our platform. So SoftServe, which is a large software development shop based out of Ukraine, they've got, I think, 30,000 software developers worldwide. They have an offering called DevIQ, which is all about how an advisory service to help people build software better. And it's all basically consulting that's wrapped around our process mining platform to help understand how to do that. We've got another great company called Hatchworks AI that helps people build and integrate AI into their software development lifecycle. They use us to profile the SDLC and ultimately to understand where to put investment in terms of using AI to automate. So we've been building core distribution channels through kind of partners building solutions with our platform. And we've been doing that in tandem with developing our own enterprise B2B sales motion.
I spent some years in Ukraine, so I'm very familiar with SoftServe and some of the big outsourcing shops out there. So there's a lot of outsourcing shops. I think they're competing. I think that market's tightening a little bit. They're finding like, how do I compete against? Yeah, it's a bit commoditized, or at least it feels that way. So they're using your tool to say to their clients, like, I can do this. I can make your team more efficient. That's kind of part of their angle.
Yeah, so there's two real elements of value that a company like SoftServe gets out of the partnership with us. The first is SoftServe will be the first to tell you, I think they have an 85 NPS score, which rivals folks like Apple and some of the leaders in the world in terms of consumer products, Spotify, stuff like that. And so in a highly commoditized space, as you correctly point out, Ken, you can imagine that there's always somebody that's willing to write code for a cheaper hourly rate. And SoftServe considers themselves to be the best in the business at what they do and believes that their NPS score justifies that positioning as the best in the business. And so, for them, it's really valuable to have an objective third party that can show, hey, look, here's what this team's doing and here's how well it's going. And, here's how you can compare different teams in order to basically allow for a premium price in what is becoming and to, differentiate in a way that shows the premium value in a market that, is becoming commoditized, right? And then the other thing that it does is it helps them where in some cases they may go in and they may be hired to do application development, like a pure outsourcing type role. But then the customer says, hey, you guys are doing a really good job of building this. Can you help us build our applications better? So moving from like just slinging code to advisory and process reengineering and process change, right? And so this DevIQ offering is the core of kind of how they do that in terms of unlocking the secret sauce in a way that sort of allows them to be a little bit more strategic and allows them to help their customers build software.
That's interesting. That reminds me of kind of the crossover between IT consulting and strategy consulting and how they started to merge, and now the outsourcers are essentially getting into consulting, which I guess it's a natural evolution, but I hadn't known
That's
that.
exactly right? The outsource shops all want to be consultants. The consultants all want to be strategic, right? And so there's, in this food chain, every organization is always trying to figure out how do they move up market and become more strategic, because The opposite of that is being relegated to a commoditized vendor where it's really, really hard to get margins.
I'm wondering, so at the moment this is only available to, well, privately, correct? It's not a publicly available product at the moment. Are you working towards a public launch?
No, so that's
Right.
not true at all, Keiran. We are very much generally available.
Sorry, I
our own
just saw join
platform.
waitlist. So I see.
Yeah, sorry. So our own. So what you actually see is that's the splash page for our Celonis partnership announcement. So our core platform, which has been in market for about a year, is generally available. We've got customers using it. We're scaling that. What we announced, again, about 2 weeks ago is this partnership with Celonis, and we kind of did a little bit of a web page takeover on that. That right now is in limited availability release. So we have early design partners that are helping us make sure that we're getting that product right. And we're targeting, somewhere around the end of this calendar year for a release of that particular product.
That sounds like quite a big partnership then. Is that kind of changed the trajectory?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the short answer. It very much changes the trajectory
Right.
of the company in a very exciting way.
Can you give us any more details? Or is it
Well,
too early?
so Celonis, right? The Celonis, again, is the undisputed leader in process mining, process analytics, and process intelligence. I think they've got something, I don't want to speak for them, but they've got something like half of the global 2,000 that uses their platform to analyze primarily, and while it's an agnostic platform that can analyze lots of different processes, they really focus a lot on kind of finance processes and what they call the core four: accounts payable, accounts receivable, sales order automation, procure to pay, right? And inventory automation. So inventory management, sales order management, procurement, accounts payable, accounts receivable. So you kind of like wrap up that bundle, okay? And they can end up automating the process, unlocking process efficiency, creating a tremendous amount of working capital for the CFO. It's just been an unbelievably successful company. I think it is the largest privately held or the fastest growing, don't hold me to these stats, but it is among, if not the most exciting software companies in all of Europe. And so it has a little bit less market penetration, but is growing very, very quickly in North America, as well as Asia Pacific, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just, Celonis is just an unbelievable company. And when we started Bloomfilter, we really started with the aspiration of being Celonis for the software development lifecycle. Like that really was our goal from day one. And so for us to have now earned the right to be Celonis for the software development lifecycle it's a tremendous, validation of our product, our methodology, the value proposition, a lot of these other kinds of things. It is a tremendous accelerant to our product first and foremost, because we're now building our capabilities on top of the world's best enterprise-grade process intelligence platform. So we're able to really accelerate a lot of the stuff that we can do from a product perspective. It also accelerates our go-to-market momentum because, as you can imagine, there are thousands of companies using Celonis to do process intelligence. And it makes it a little bit easier for us to begin the conversation with many of them when we're starting from a position of, hey, you're already using this platform. You already love it. You're already using it to profile and improve lots of your business processes. Why not look at this one over here, software development, and see what we can do?
Exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Yes. Are there any, I know this is obviously not your first rodeo, but are there any lessons learned so far on this journey?
I mean, there are always lessons learned, right? I think entrepreneurship is the hardest. I think it's a sacred journey. I think it's, I've learned in my 42 years on the planet, like it is just what I love to do in this world. I think it's an amazing profession and I love it. I also think it's the hardest thing there is to do, candidly, professionally. At least I've tried a bunch of different jobs and it's the one that I think is both the hardest and the most fun. I had someone say this to me a few months ago and it really rings true to me. Entrepreneurship is the art of figuring out how do you get a good night's sleep despite the fact that you've simultaneously had the best and the worst professional day of your career. And like the ups and downs are tremendous. They come in very quick cycles. It can be whiplash inducing, and it can be exhausting. And I actually wrote a book on this topic about mental resilience and the importance of it to the entrepreneurial journey called Scale Your Everest. And it's all about, how do we as entrepreneurs maintain the mental resilience and the mental fortitude that we need to be able to operate as best we can under these just incredibly crazy conditions. And then for me, this is certainly not my first time building a company. It is my first time building a company as a father who's now married with 2 children. And so, my family dynamics are very different. My time allocation is very different. My ability to work all night is very different. And so, candidly, my energy level is a little different some days if I end up having a late night with my girls or whatever. And so, so for me, there's a lot of lessons learned. The one that I am continuously reminded of is I chose this journey. I love this journey. I'm in so many ways privileged to have the pressures that I've earned the right to go have. How do I maintain that sense of joy? And how do I maintain that sense of gratitude when it feels like everything's hard and everything's going nuts? How do I maintain the joy and the gratitude for the opportunity that I have, which really is a special one, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. And it's how do I maintain that worldview and that sort of sense of self in those moments as things are going up?
One thing related to this, just wondering, this founder mode stuff is very big. So I was watching Mark Anderson get interviewed the other day, and he was talking about Elon Musk and Elon Musk's approach towards this founder mode thing, where he just, he forgets about all the management layers and he just talks to the 20-year-old kid who considers him his idol, and like the 20-year-old kid's like all gung ho. And what's your approach on this whole founder approach to managing?
Yeah. I wrote a quick take on it on LinkedIn when it came out. So I did not like the essay, and I read a lot of Paul Graham's stuff, and I'm a big fan of a lot of what Paul Graham writes. Paul Graham's essay does this thing that a lot of essays do. Ben Horowitz does this in The Hard Thing About Hard Things, where they basically put up this Mount Rushmore of entrepreneurs. And in my view, they make all of us lowly peons that are still building companies almost feel bad about ourselves because, hey, this is what Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and Steve Jobs all do. And they're all perfect at all of this stuff. So, like, hey, dipshit Erik Severinghaus, like, I don't know, how come you aren't in founder mode the way Elon Musk is or whatever, right? So first of all, like, I don't like the framing. I kind of reject it as like a source of context of like, I'm going to go, like, I've never met Elon Musk. I am tremendously impressed with many of his accomplishments, but like, it's really hard for me to like profile myself after a leader that I've never met because, and for me to compare myself to him and all this other kind of stuff, right? So I don't really like the way a lot of it's framed. I think founder mode, like the other problem that I have with it is it sort of erects a straw man, in my view, which is like bureaucracy for bureaucracy's sake and complexity within an organization. And then it says, hey, you know what? Like, that's bad. Well, yeah, no duh. Like, candidly, that's bad at IBM. Like, IBM would tell you they don't like having lots of bureaucracy for the sake of bureaucracy, right? Like, I do think the essay makes a point that is useful to remember, which is like, we as founders have the opportunity and the obligation sometimes to cut through the noise and to, go get stuff done when we need to go get it done. But on the other hand, man, founder mode is leadership the same way anything else is leadership. And being a founder and building it, like, if I'm just constantly cutting out my VPs and cutting their legs out from under them and not empowering them and second guessing and destroying their decisions because I'm listening to my gut and I'm in founder mode, well, how the hell am I ever going to get great VPs to want to come work for me if I'm not empowering them, I'm not letting them make decisions and all that other kind of stuff, right? I think Steve Jobs is also on record as having said, and I don't know if this is apocryphal or not, but I think he's also on record as having said, like, I don't hire the smartest people in the world so I can tell them what to do. I try and find the smartest people in the world so they can tell me what to do, right? Which I think is also a fantastic quote and is kind of the antithesis of this idea that because I'm the founder, I'm also omniscient and I should be the one making every decision. So as with many things in life, like I think there's a point to it. I think there's a time to listen to it. And I think there's a balancing act and a tension point between like the context of the situation you're in. Sometimes that tool in the toolbox can make sense. Sometimes we need to cut through the noise and just go get stuff done. But I think if you try and run an organization that way, I'm not sure that I think it's a recipe for success more often.
Thank you. Fair. Yeah.
There you go. Erik Severinghaus' spicy take on fun.
Well, look, I think we better wrap it up for today. It's been an absolute pleasure, Erik, and there's never enough time with these things. We only get to scratch the surface, really. But it's been a very interesting scratch. A nice itch. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, this has been a ton of fun. I really appreciate you guys, and I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Art.
See you again.